All right, welcome to another episode of the Cassels cast. My name's Eamon Cassels. Joining me today is going to be Quinn Everts. We're going to be discussing our five favorite storylines of the NBA season so far before wrapping up with a few questions from you guys. Without any further ado, let's get into my conversation with Quinn. All right, joining me now is Quinn Everts to discuss some of our favorite storylines around the NBA season so far. How you doing today, Quinn?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Since you're the guest, I'll let you get started. And yeah, what's your number one favorite storyline of the season so far?
I think my favorite thing I've been watching to follow is probably the rookie class and just how good so many rookies are, and not just good for rookies either. It feels like more rookies this year are just good players off the bat, as opposed to guys who you can see eventually becoming good, but as rookies, they're still not really helping the team. And that might just come from the fact that last year's class was so rough, so it just feels like this class is so much better. But you go down the list like Cooper Flag, Conkin Nipple, Cedric Coward, VJ Edgecombe, Dylan Harper, Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen starting to do some impressive things. Like there are guys who are legitimately helping their team every time they're on the floor and producing at pretty high volume. And that's just been a blast to watch. A lot of them are on bad teams, but it's just I've had a blast watching the young guys develop this year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great one. I mean, honestly, I can't think of a rookie class quite like this in my lifetime. Definitely seen some good ones. I think like 2021 comes to mind, but like you said, just so many players contributing immediately is kind of incredible. And I mean, Cooper's always going to be the headline guy, and rightfully so. He's the number one pick. He's this potential like regular All NBA guy. But just how many good players there have been. I mean, the six or seven other names that you listed certainly there, and I feel like all of them have legit All NBA upside, which is just super rare to say, and they're already putting it together. It's definitely surprised me just how many of them have been good right away. I mean, we knew the upside of some of these guys, but I mean, even like a guy like Dylan Harper, who's on this Spurs team, would the opportunity totally be there with Steph Castle and De'Aaron Fox, and then Wemby as well? I think that's a fair question, and he's totally shut all those concerns down. And that three-headed guard trio is just looking amazing. And I've really been impressed with Harper, especially because he is one of those few rookies contributing at a winning level. And then you look at guys like you said, Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears, who are really giving this Pelicans team a bright spot in the season so far. And then of course Cooper. Con Knippel is one that just shocked me how good he is right away.
Yeah.
Obviously, you knew his game was going to translate nicely, but I didn't think it would be this quick. And then, sort of similar with VJ Edgecombe, especially because that 76ers backcourt does have a lot of depth there. I was wondering what that opportunity would be. And then he comes in and he immediately drops like 37 points in his first game. It's like he's arrived. Cedric
Nice.
Howard's just a cool one. I'm happy you shouted him out too because I
Eastern
feel like
Washington represent. Shout out to Palouse, the 509 Eastern Washington alum. Gotta love that.
yes, sir. No, that he's had such a cool. That has got to be my favorite story in the NBA. Going from Division 3 to Eastern Washington to playing 6 games at Washington State. Transfers to Duke, but he ultimately forgoes that for the NBA draft, and he shoots up into the lottery. And I mean, just his physical tools are insane, which I feel like is a big reason why he shot up. But he also just has an awesome game. The defensive impact is already there, and he's just such a smooth operator on offense. He really, I mean, he reminds me of some really high level players like Kawhi Leonard. Honestly, I
I
see
love
that
it.
a little bit in his game, or even like Mikal Bridges. But yeah, he's just been awesome, and he was a guy that I really fell in love with during the pre-draft process, and I'm happy to see him playing at such a high level. But is there any draft class that you think sort of compares to this in your lifetime, or and also is there anybody that's like especially surprised you from this draft class?
I can't think of. So you look back to like 2018, where now you look back and you're like, oh, half the guys in the first round are like at least contributors on teams now. But even then, like maybe it's just recency bias. I don't remember any class in my lifetime being good this early. Like that happens, like you do redrafts, 5 years down the line, and you're like, whoa, this guy really panned out. But to have the instant impact like this is kind of unprecedented. I nothing comes to mind. But yeah, all the guys you mentioned are awesome. And the Spurs and the Sixers both taking guards where it's like, what's kind of their role, or who are they pushing out of the backcourt, when they come in and start to play really well. And it's like, they both look like they can exist as the three-man backcourts now, which is really cool. Dylan Harper in the Cup championship. I mean, they all still have like rookie moments, of course. Like Dylan Harper, I think he hit a three, like got a block or made a good defensive play, then got an offensive rebound, and then just like chucked up a three that he bricked. It's like, okay, even the young guys, they deserve to have rookie moments every once in a while. But they've been awesome, and I do think Con Knipple is the most surprising to me, just because of he's going to Charlotte, which is a brutal place to try and get your career off the ground in the first place. I think it's his haircut that made me think he couldn't be that good immediately. I'm like, that's not the haircut of a primary ball handler in the NBA, but he surprised me. That's what has really surprised me the most. The shooting, it's like we knew it was there. It's been maybe even a little better than I thought, but we all knew the shooting was there. I think it's the playmaking and the facilitation that he's like, you don't really need to do that because they're kind of just giving you the green light in Charlotte. But the fact that he's still interested in getting teammates involved right off the bat is pretty impressive. I don't think I quite realized his ceiling, or I underrated his ceiling, and he's pretty phenomenal to watch, even if the Hornets at large aren't great to watch. And yeah, just Jeremiah Fears. I saw him in person in Chicago last week. The Pelicans played the Bulls, and I don't know if I've ever seen a faster player in my life. His first step is great, but just in the open court, it's pretty absurd to see how much faster he looks than everyone else on the court. I mean, when you're being defended by like, Josh Giddey or Patrick Williams or whatever, maybe that helps you look a little faster. But I mean, it's pretty stunning how quick he moves around the court. His bag is much deeper than I gave him credit for during the draft process. So I think Fears and Knipple have the upside that I didn't quite realize. But yeah, the whole class has just been a blast to watch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good point of reference, that 2018 draft class, because that was absolutely loaded. And Luca had an awesome rookie season, but even you look at some of the guys that have went on to have great careers, like a Trey Young, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges. It took them a while.
You're right. It was like even the first half of the season, it's like I'm very lenient on rookies and evaluating them. It's like if you have a weak stretch where you're good, then I'm convinced you'll be good for like you'll have a good career. Like my bar is very low just because it's so hard to make a transition from college or international to the NBA. That it's like you really don't have to show me that much in your rookie season for me to think that you'll have a pretty good career just because we've seen it so many times. Like guys struggle a ton off the bat and then, because it's just so hard to get accustomed to the NBA. But yeah, this impact immediately is pretty wild to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel like for rookies, it's tough because if you're going to a good team, it's tough to crack that rotation. But if you're going to a bad team, you're going to have that opportunity, but you also don't have the talent around you to necessarily put yourself in a successful position. And I feel like we're seeing with the rookies in this class, they're making the most of their opportunities on good teams, or they're really excelling on these bad teams where they just don't have a ton of talent around them. And both of that is just
Yeah.
super impressive to me.
It's why I still believe in Bilal Koulibaly. I'm like, no, the situation's bad. I swear he's good. Like, free him, let him be somewhere where he's around good players. I swear there's something in there.
No, absolutely. He's a great one because, I mean, just the defense, especially. I mean, offense is still going to be a work in progress, but if you're a defender at that level, you can contribute to winning basketball. So, yeah, can't give up on those guys, especially, I mean, second, third year. I mean, it takes guys some time, which I think is worth noting.
All
All
right,
right, I'll
you got it
start
first.
off with my first one. Yeah, I got the Houston Rockets offense. Obviously, adding Kevin Durant, you assume they're going to get better. I don't think that's necessarily surprised anyone. But the way they've done it has kind of surprised me. They're third in offense overall per cleaning the glass, but they're last in three-point frequency, which in the modern NBA just doesn't sound possible at all. And they've done that a couple of ways, in my opinion. First off, they're super accurate when they do shoot threes, and that makes sense, especially with Durant and then Reed Shepard, who's been an absolute revelation for them. You're going to be pretty efficient, and then they just crash the glass like no other team in the league. They're first in offensive rebounding rate by a pretty significant margin, and they just have a ton of size, which is really overwhelming for teams. Now with Josh Okogie back in the mix and then Reed Shepard getting a bigger role, it's not like it was in the beginning of the season where they were pretty much playing only guys 6'7" and up. But even still, they just have a ton of size, and that's overwhelming for the vast majority of teams in the league, especially the way they crash the glass. I mean, defensively, it's kind of a different story talking about their offense, but defensively, that also makes them one of the best defensive teams in the league. And Alperen Şengün's just been a guy who's really impressed me, taking that step up. Not like a massive statistical jump, but still a pretty notable one, especially with Durant. And they've really ran most of their offense through Durant and Şengün, which has been really awesome to watch. And then you look at Amin Thompson, who's still, again, taking that slight step up. Despite Durant being there, and Reed Shepard, who's just really burst onto the scene with that Fred VanVleet injury, and he's given them a lot of 3 point shooting juice, which has been helpful. But yeah, overall, my big thing with the Rockets is just they've been one of my favorite teams to watch for the third straight year. And it's kind of interesting because each year it's looked a little bit different, but it's always just been a ton of fun to watch. And I mean, if they were in the East, I think I would easily pick them to make it to the NBA Finals. But even in the West, I think they're a legitimate title threat.
I love it. No, you're totally right. Like the bar in the West is so high where it's like, oh yeah, they look really good, but it still feels like there's a pretty substantial gap between them and the Thunder and maybe even them and the Nuggets because the Nuggets look so good. It's like you put them in the East and it's like pretty undoubtedly the best team out there. But no, I fully agree with you. It's crazy that after the Van Vliet injury, everyone was like, okay, you don't really have any playmaking anymore. What's your plan at guard? And the Rockets are basically like, we'll just have Amen Thompson and Şengün and Reed Shepard kind of like share point guard duties and not really have a real point guard. And everyone's like, that's a terrible idea. It's not going to work. But they seem so weirdly confident in it. And everyone's like, maybe it will work. And now it's kind of working. Like they just have not point guards bringing the ball up, and it sort of works. Yeah, Şengün's been dominant. It's pretty awesome to see. If I have a concern, like I'm not concerned about anything on their offense, but as Kevin Durant has kind of done in his last two stops, it's like you can become like the offense in the fourth quarter if you want to. Like you don't have to just be one of the guys who fits in on this team. Like you can be Kevin Durant if you want. So I don't know if Ime Udoka needs to be the guy who just like shakes him and be like, stop playing team ball so much in the fourth quarter, like take over. But for the most part, you're totally right. I love watching them. They kind of remind me of that championship Nuggets team a couple of years ago where they're like, we don't really need to take threes because we have a dominant post player, great finishers, guys who can drive and guys who can shoot in the mid range. But like, if we're going to shoot threes, we're probably going to make them. Like, that feels like such a dangerous offense when it's like, we're not going to live or die by the three, but we can still beat you with a three if it comes to that. But yeah, I'm totally with you. I make an appointment to watch them as much as possible just because they're a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. That 23 Nuggets comp is a really good one, something I haven't thought of. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I'd rather a team just be super efficient from three and not totally have the volume compared to where you're shooting a bunch of threes, but your efficiency's maybe middle of the pack. I just think that's a lot more dangerous, especially with the personnel that this Rockets team has. And then regarding Durant, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I feel like that Nuggets game a couple of days ago is just a prime example of like, hey, it's okay to take over
Yeah,
sometimes. And I get he's
please take
on a
over.
new team. Literally, that's why they got him. Quite frankly, they didn't have that closer last year, and that hurt them in some regards. So yeah, I would like to see him just be a little bit more aggressive in the clutch. But I think at some point we're just gonna see maybe it's a one game thing that sort of flips the switch for him, but he's just gonna reach that different level and be that elite closer that we all know he can be.
Right. And if that's your biggest problem as a team, you're like, oh, Kevin Durant, like sometimes it won't just like dominate in the clutch. It's like things are probably going pretty well for you if you can nitpick that. So yeah, I'm with you. They've been a blast.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What do you got for your second storyline here?
My second one, this is just because who among us doesn't enjoy chaos? It's the Clippers and the Pelicans owing their draft picks to the Thunder and the Hawks next year. You know, one of those could potentially ruin the NBA, but it's still kind of entertaining to watch. Like, I don't even hate the Clippers. I really have nothing against them except after the Chris Paul thing. It's kind of like, what are you guys doing? But I don't hate them, overall, despite how hard they're trying to get everyone to hate them. But it is funny that it's like this is the snowball effect in the NBA. Like we've gotten to this point. And then the Pelicans, like I tried to defend them for that trade because it's like, okay, sure, you owe next year's first round pick, but that's still a hypothetical. Like, that's still a pick, not a player, and you got Derek Queen out of it. But now it's like, okay, you really are as bad or worse than everyone thought you would be, and you still do owe that pick. And Derek Queen is awesome, but there was kind of no reason to make that trade. Like, I swear I wasn't trying to be a contrarian, but I was like, whatever. If you have a guy, go get him and then worry about the future later. But it's like now we kind of have to worry about the future because you guys are also terrible. But been better since James Borrego took over. Shout out JB. He always deserved a head coaching job in the NBA, but still pretty rough. And it's like you have things to look forward to with Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, but those guys plus a rookie in next year's draft class would actually like be something you can build around, and not having that is a little bleak. So I've just been enjoying the fact that like two of the worst teams in the NBA right now aren't playing for what bad teams would normally be playing for. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a super interesting one. In terms of like the trade with the Pelicans, my thing is just like they could have put a protection on it.
Yeah, even like a top four or top five, it's like the Hawks would still say yes to that deal if you're like, okay, make it top four protected. So in case it's a superstar, we can still get him. But it's like I've always wanted to just like be in the draft room of teams during draft night because like how fast do you have to make that decision? Like thinking of the Pelicans front office being like, oh, we really want Derek Queen. Give up next year's first round pick. Protections. Oh no, whatever. Just give it to him. And it's like, and then the adrenaline's probably so crazy. And then after you do it, you're like, oh, we got Derek Queen, and now we maybe gave up like Debonsa or Boozer, but like whatever.
Yeah, no, that the whole reporting behind it's really funny to me because I believe it was 9 through because they traded up to 13. So like they called everyone 9 through 13 and they were the ones who were offering that exact package, which is wild in the fact that they were the ones offering that package, but it's also wild that other teams like turned it down.
The Hawks being like the fourth or fifth team to get the call and being like, what are we missing? Why would other teams say no to this? Like, yeah, we'll take your unprotected pick next year.
Yeah, of course. And it was a 10 spot difference from where they were at. So yeah, that's crazy. Luckily they do look like they have found something in Derek Queen and he's a future star, but you're also probably going to give up a future star by making that trade. And then the Clippers, I would say just kind of terrifies me, but I'm a little bit happy at just karma based after the whole Chris Paul situation. But it still terrifies me that this Thunder team could get a top pick. I will say on the other side, like the Hawks, it's kind of fascinating if they can get one of these top picks, what direction they go, and they're a really fun team to watch. So I'm happy for the Hawks, absolutely. But in general, I think what this kind of changes is just like how these teams approach the deadline. Because if you're a team who, to this point, the Clippers have won 6 games, the Pelicans have won 5 games, traditionally you'd just be trying to sell. And maybe they do go in this direction. They just say, screw it. Like the Clippers are super old. Maybe they look to trade some of these guys. Maybe Harden pulls his famous trade request and that changes things. But I just don't see these teams trying to sell that much just because of their pick situation. I think it would just look worse. I mean, Trey Murphy, unless they get something really, really good, I don't see him being a trade candidate. Zion is the one maybe I could see because it's just like, honestly, the return might not be great, but the return, whatever they get back for him, might actually play games and might actually help you win. And it's just kind of, it definitely seems time for them to like wash their hands of this era. But at the same time, if I was these teams, I would be looking to buy with what I can and try to improve the roster just to make something out of this season because giving up a top 3 pick potentially in this draft is just terrifying.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know if I can ever remember even one team being in the situation where it's like, both of these teams are bad enough to where in any other season they would obviously tank the second half. They'd be like, who wants these players? We'll take, young guys or expiring contracts and a bunch of picks. But it's like they can't really do that. Like that feels like the worst decision instead of being like, well, we'll, do the noble thing and try to win. But it's like, well, we know you're just doing it because you have to. But the fact that there's two teams that are doing that this year is pretty wild.
It really is, yeah. And like you said, I can't remember a situation quite like this, especially with the draft class we have. Like maybe it's pretty different, but like a couple years ago, I know the Raptors gave up a lottery pick to the Spurs, but hey, that was
Yeah,
a
that's right.
totally
And
different.
the hurdle, the
Yeah, the Jakob, which was kind of crazy in itself, but totally different situation in that 2024 draft class versus now, especially with what that pick's going to become. So yeah, I can't remember anything quite like this, and I'm definitely, especially just based off the deadline, and then of course like how the rest of the season plays out. But I'm really interested to see what these teams do at the deadline.
Me too. And I'm pro trading draft picks for the record. I'm like, picks aren't real. Trade them. Always, trade picks, whatever. Who cares? Get real players. But this is probably why I shouldn't be an NBA GM because I would be trading all these picks. And then it'd come to the point where it's like, well, we don't have a first for 6 years and our team is barely 500. It's like, well, I really liked the idea of getting that player instead of the picks. So maybe I might have to rethink my stance on that. But it's like even for someone who's pro getting rid of picks, these have not aged well for these teams.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it depends on the team. A few recent examples. I love the Desmond Bain trade. I
Me
think that
too,
makes a lot of sense. Those picks
100%.
aren't going to be that valuable. Sort of similar with the Knicks and Mikal Bridges
Yeah,
trade.
same.
Rudy Gobert, Timberwolves trade. You can come up Bucks trade with Drew Holiday. You can come up with a lot of examples where it's led to winning. And honestly, like with this Clippers situation, it's gonna probably go down as the worst trade in NBA history. Maybe the Luka trade, one of those two, whatever. But at the same time, this is like the worst case scenario. When
It's
you're
true. It's like how there no this is the wildest outcome that like it is bad, but even there's no way the Thunder were even like this is exactly how this trade is going to work out. They were like, okay, we'll get rid of Paul George and get a bunch and or get Paul George and get rid of a bunch of picks. Like what's the worst that could happen? It's like this is literally the worst that could have happened.
Yeah, literally. I mean, if you play this out 100 times, this is the absolute worst case scenario where, at the very least, you would hope the Clippers could have made it to the NBA Finals once. I feel like most people thought they would win a championship. I certainly did when they first made that trade, but yeah, it's been rough, and the availability has been a real problem. I feel like that's it. The warning sign is maybe like don't do it for a guy who's like 30-ish or whatever.
Yeah.
The age and the injury concerns because I mean, they weren't. I don't know how old Paul George and Kawhi were at the time, but the injury concerns were very real, regardless of how good they were at the time. But yeah, just an absolutely crazy situation all around, honestly. All right, we can move into my next one, and I mean, this isn't totally specific to this season, but I feel like it's been more noticeable than ever, and it's just how many good two-way players we have in this league. And I love the addition of this two-way contract that they put in fairly recently. I think it's awesome just to give guys an opportunity, and it's really, really worked out for a lot of teams. And I love when teams take advantage of these spots and they give them real minutes because a lot of these guys can be those diamonds in the rough, and they can be super, super impactful. Just a few guys I want to shout out around the league. I listed like 7 guys, and I feel like I'm forgetting someone. So if I am, please let me know. There's just been so many impactful guys. I'll first start off with 2 rookies that have really impressed me, and that's Ryan Nemhard on the Mavericks, who's really taken over as that starting point guard and helped the Mavericks sort of get back on track. It's crazy what you can do when you have a legitimate point guard. But Nemhard's a fun one because he's also just so small and he's an incredible playmaker and he's really helping the Mavericks a lot. And then Caleb Love on the Blazers. He was a multi-year college guy. I enjoyed watching him in college, pure bucket getter. I didn't know if he totally had an NBA future. He ended up going undrafted, gets the two-way spot, but he's given the Blazers some really good minutes, especially with the injuries they've had. Another guy I'd like to shout out is Spencer Jones on the Nuggets, who has
Yeah.
quietly became like a starter and closer for this team with the injuries they've had to Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon. But he was a guy not on my radar at all. I'll be completely honest. He's
Me
just a
neither.
defensive menace, and he contributes to winning at such a high level. And he's one of these guys that's really doing it for a winning team. So shout out to Spencer Jones. That Rockets game from a few days ago like really sticks in my brain because he was
Crazy.
just guarding everyone. He was guarding Kevin Durant, Şengün at times. It was super impressive.
It's
Couple other
wild too
guys.
because it feels like the Nuggets have trusted him and believed in him way before anyone else did. Like even I think he was on the team last year too and played a little bit, and everyone's like, "What's the purpose of this guy being on the team?" And even earlier in this season, where it's like, "Is there any reason we're starting Spencer Jones?" And then maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago at this point, he just had a game where he completely broke out and has been good since then. And everyone's like, "Okay, fine. Like we trust the development process now." But I agree, it's awesome. Like the Nuggets having clear belief in him. It's awesome to see like a team believe in a guy before there's seemingly reason to, and then he actually comes along, and it's like, okay, respect. That's some good development right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the Nuggets specifically, I think it's pretty interesting because they've had a lot of young guys that everyone's sort of waiting for this like Peyton Watson breakout, and like myself included, but like Peyton Watson, Julian Strother,
Zeke Naji.
Zeke Naji, yep, Jalen Pickett. There's been so many of these young guys that fans are like they got to have the breakout, and it happens to be Spencer Jones who's just on nobody's radar, and
That's
it's
true. That's
honestly
so
just
funny.
cool.
Yeah, I love it. And yeah, shout out to Nempard too. I don't. This doesn't make any sense, but I'm like, I do think you're gonna be better if you have a brother already in the league who's pretty good. Like, I know that's not fair to compare you to a sibling, but I'm like, if there's someone who you already is good that has your name, in my head, you're the same player, which shouldn't be dumb. But it kind of, in this case, I was like, I would have given Nembhard a shot because his brother's good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like there's real truth in that. I mean, brother or like father in the NBA. I feel like you just sort of know the path, and I just sort of believe in you based off that. And Nemhard was a guy like back in the draft. I was like kind of surprised he went undrafted. I think that was probably intentional, if I had to guess. A lot of these guys that go undrafted, they don't really go undrafted. Their agents are kind of like, hey, we got a team lined up. Let's make it happen. A couple other guys I'll give a quick shout out to, though. Dominic Barlow, he's played some really good minutes for the Sixers, sort of as that spot starter. I feel like I'm kind of bearing the lead here, but Pat Spencer's been incredible for the Warriors. I feel like he's like the most notable two-way guy. He's just so crafty and just an all-around scorer. And another awesome story because he was playing D1 lacrosse. He was the best
Third.
lacrosse player in the country. Plays
Crazy.
1 year of college basketball, and he's in his like mid late 20s now, and he's like finally having that like NBA breakout. I don't want to say finally because he literally played 1 year of college basketball, but he's having that opportunity and he's 100% going to get converted to a standard deal. But he's been a real bright spot in an otherwise weird Warrior season. And
For
then
sure.
Nikhil Tomlin and Dennis Jenkins are two other guys I've been impressed with in their minutes, playing some rotational minutes for the Cavs and Pistons respectively as they've been dealing with injuries. But two other guys who just weren't on my radar, and two other guys, guess what? They had awesome stories on how they got here to the league with Tomlin not playing high school basketball, which is totally insane. He goes to like 3 or 4 colleges, and then sort of similar to Jenkins, he goes to I think 3 or 4 different colleges. Eventually ends up with Greg Pitino at St. John's. But yeah, just super cool stories, and I just love seeing these sort of under the radar players get this opportunity and burst onto the scene as real contributors.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, Tomlin impresses me pretty much every time I watch the Cavs. It's funny because the Cavs, he and Jalen Tyson, where I'm like, they have two legit like maybe guys who can be around a long time, but the vibes among the fans at least are so bad because they've disappointed. It's like we don't even really care that much anymore. But yeah, oh, and actually shout out, I forgot to respond to Caleb Love. He's such a fascinating player because if you watched only his good games in college, you'd be like, this is a lottery pick. And if you watched only his bad games in college, you'd be like, this is, a guy who's going to be great in like the Georgian basketball league or whatever. And then it's kind of the same in the NBA. You watch his good games and you're like, this is the starting point guard of the Blazers, right? And then you watch his bad games and you're like, this is the tank commander this year. But yeah, I always love seeing two-way guys succeed. I'll also give a shout out to Oregon State legend Ethan Thompson on the Pacers. He was at Oregon State when I was in college, so I was watching his college games, and I'm almost 30, so that was a very long time ago. And so to see him pop up, like I didn't know he got a two-way deal until he was playing and scored like 10 points and did a bunch of stuff in his first game. And that's like the definition of grinding it out in the G League until you get your chance. I'm pretty sure he was playing in Puerto Rico at one point, and he's like 26 or 27 now and a rookie. And it's like in a year where the Pacers are like just throw anything at the wall and hope it sticks, like finding a good two-way player is a huge success. And the fact that it might be Ethan Thompson is awesome to see. I just love the grinders who just pop up years after you've forgotten about them and be like, all right, I love to see it. So shout out to ET, and yeah, shout out to all the two-way guys.
Yeah, no, that's a great shout. He's been impactful with the Pacers in this just like total nightmare season they're having. And if there's one organization, I can't say I'm surprised that the Pacers have found just another gem because I seemingly always do it, whether it's like these second round picks, these undrafted guys, these two-way guys, whatever. They have a way to find talent, and it's super impressive.
It is, and it's crazy because it looked like that guy was going to be Quentin Jackson earlier in the year, and then he got hurt, and it was like, okay, the cool feel-good story, didn't end up happening, and then I was like, well, we got another guy, maybe it could be Ethan Thompson. Like, there's just an endless supply of like guards who just pop up and are kind of good. So yeah, I love to see that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm excited to see the Pacers healthy next year because, I mean, it's kind of been, even though there's been some bright spots, it's been a bit of a rough watch overall. But yeah, excited to see what they can be fully healthy because last
Right.
year it was just incredible.
Yeah, and they're like the opposite of the Clippers and the Pelicans, where it's like this is the best like bad year they could possibly have. Where it's like we know we have our superstar coming back next year. A bunch of guys have been hurt. Like our team's still going to be good, and we might get like a top five pick. Like this is how you operate a year where you are kind of tanking unintentionally. Like it's the future is brighter than I can imagine. Like remember for a team that's this bad, except maybe like the Warriors that one year when Steph was hurt most of the year, and it's like well they ended up getting James Wiseman, but the idea is the same.
Yeah, most definitely. It is very similar to like 2020 year with the Warriors.
Yeah.
And hey, you brought up the Pelicans. I just want to give them a shout out for trading the Pacers their first round pick back because that really helped them.
Yeah, that's actually great. See, that's just great front office work. Like that's you got to respect that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think they traded it back like a few days before the Halliburton injury, which is just like kind of
Well,
crazy to
yeah, it
me.
was like during the finals, and everyone's like, "Okay, we'll worry about that." Like, no one could even because it was, I think, just picks, four other picks. Everyone's like, "We will worry about this when there's no basketball going on." So yeah, that's pretty savvy work right there.
Yeah, for sure. What do you got for your third storyline though?
Their storyline, I'll go Mike Brown basically being a perfect fit with the Knicks. When they fired Tom Thibodeau, I you know, I love Mike Brown as a coach. I thought he had a great run in Sacramento. Like I thought he got kind of hosed there, but good for him getting out when he could, I guess. But I didn't necessarily see the transition from Thibodeau to Mike Brown being the transition from like an Eastern Conference Finals team to like an NBA Finals team. I was like, sort of get, bringing a new voice in and changing things up, but I don't know if this is the change that makes that, marginal leap from an already really good team to like a real contending team. But I was maybe wrong. It kind of looks like, he is exactly what they needed. The counting stats for most of their core guys aren't that different, but it does feel like everyone's playing their role perfectly right now. And the fact that Mike Brown is willing to like turn to Tyler Kolek in the NBA Cup championship and be like, sure, you can be like a big contributor here, is the kind of thing that like Tibbs would have probably been, hesitant to do. And just yeah, the buy-in from the Knicks looks real. Like the vibes are fantastic. He's making the right rotations. He's giving guys chances to kind of come on strong. And so yeah, he's pretty much everything they expected to be, which isn't a shock because he is a good coach. But it's like this does look like they've made the kind of marginal leap from Eastern Conference Finals team to team that maybe is the favorite to come out of the East right now. So shout out to Mike Brown and the Knicks.
Yeah, no, for sure. I totally agree with that. I think just going back to like when they fired Tibbs, it was kind of interesting. It was like you're coming off your first conference finals appearance in
Yeah,
25 years. That's a little interesting. I know he's not exactly like a total like players friendly coach, which surely played a part in that. But I was always like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then when all these rumors came out, they're looking at Jason Kidd, Chris Finch, Ime Udoka is like, you're not going to get those guys. And it did seem like Mike Brown was like their 12th option, but ultimately he might have been the best coach for this team. And like you said, the buy-in totally seems real. And just the offensive creativity is a big, big difference in my opinion. One thing I was super critical of the Knicks for, even though they did make the conference finals, they beat my Celtics. So I'm not in any means they weren't a bad team, but I mean, the creativity with Tibbs wasn't totally there. And I felt like they were a little bit too reliant on Jalen Brunson. And now you can see some of these other guys getting empowered, whether it be like an OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, really all of these guys. And then the two-man game between Cat and Brunson looks a lot better. Overall, their offensive numbers are much, much better than they were last year. So I I couldn't be more impressed, honestly. And I also like that you brought up that Tyler Kolek in the NBA Cup Finals point because he was awesome for them, and that's just an adjustment you probably wouldn't have seen from Thibodeau, quite frankly. But yeah, that was a really awesome move, and Tyler Kolek's another guy where just what an awesome story. And he was a guy that I really loved watching in college, so I'm
me
happy to
too. He
see
was
that
awesome.
he was so fun. He's like such a traditional player in the sense like he's like a pure playmaker almost. He can finish, but like just that like traditional point guard type that you just don't see that often, and it's awesome to see that he's like seemingly carved out a real role in the NBA.
It's crazy because in the offseason when the Knicks were like, we'll trade anyone, Tyler Kolek or, Pack Home Daddy A, because we really want Malcolm Brogdon to sign like a standard contract. And so anyone could have gone and got Tyler Kolek if they wanted to. And then Malcolm Brogdon retired, and the Knicks are like, okay, I guess we can keep both these guys. And now it's like, it's just a crazy like snowball effect where Malcolm Brogdon retiring maybe got the Knicks like a rotation guy for a couple of years. It's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is very crazy to think about that, and just in general, like some of these offseason moves they've made haven't totally worked out, and they've still gotten a little bit more production out of their bench. But like Gershon Yabusele hasn't been great. Jordan
Yeah. And I
Clarkson's been
love
a
that
little up
signing
and
too.
down. No, same. I thought that was like one of the best value signings of the offseason. But some of these moves haven't totally worked out. Miles McBride has been in and out of the lineup with injury. Mitchell Robinson has been good off the bench, but like they haven't had like the bench that you would have thought, and they're still finding ways to get production out of that. And I think that's credit to Mike Brown for empowering some of these guys like Kulik.
Yeah, and I love that, Josh Hart starting the year on the bench. I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'm cool with Mike Brown, trying different things. But then, 2 weeks in, when it was like, okay, Josh Hart is not, the sixth man guy you want him to be, being willing, Mike Brown, to admit that and be like, okay, maybe Tom Thibodeau had some things figured out. Like, Josh Hart is clearly a starter, and he's been so much better since he put him back in the lineup. Like, it takes a very good coach to be like, all right, the guy before me had some things right, and I'm not afraid to like stick with that. I don't need everything to be drastically different now that I took over. So yeah, he's making adjustments on the fly, and it's been pretty great for him this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like that's a massive part of coaching. It's just like making those necessary adjustments and not being afraid to try something new or go back to what works. And with Hart in the lineup, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I think they're like 9-2 or something like that.
Yeah, it's
So the
good. He's
results
averaging
speak
like
for themselves.
17 and 9 and 5. Like he looks like the guy who was like a borderline all-star again last year. It's like, all right, this is the Josh Hart they really need.
Exactly. Yeah. Just honestly, one of the best role players in the league. And he's a guy that you would never think watching him that he's like 3 or 6'4" because he literally plays like he's 6'10".
I love a guard or a small forward who can rebound so well. It's such a satisfying skill to watch.
No, it really is, and it's definitely not something you totally see around the league all the time. So it's super cool for sure. We can move ahead to my next one. It's sort of similar to my last one with the two-way players, but it's just like these unexpected breakout stars, I guess. Sort of see it every year, and maybe it's just the fact that we're in December, and once we get up to 82 games, this will not hold. But so far, there's been just a ton of unexpected breakout players, and guys that like if you're trying to put together a most improved player ballot, it's really difficult right now because there's so many guys that are deserving of that award. You look at Austin Reeves taking that next step up. That's the first guy that comes to mind. He was a guy like fringe maybe heading into the year like fringe top 50 for me, and now he looks like legit like top 25 range, averaging 27 a game, just insane. And I mean all the perimeter creation and playmaking that Lakers team has, they're going to be dangerous when it comes to the playoffs. And you can say that about like 5, 6 teams in the West, but the Lakers are going to be a really tough out, and Reeves has been a huge part of that. You look at two guys I want to shout out also, just sort of based on the two-way thing, because they were two-way guys last year, and they've really leveled up to a degree that I didn't fully expect. Ryan Rollins and Colin Gillespie, they've been awesome. Just I feel like they were both kind of on my radar as hey, they could establish themselves as legitimate rotation players, but not legitimate like oh, this is like a real starting guard in the league who really, I mean, especially with Rollins, he just does a little bit of everything and there's like no flaws in his game. And then Gillespie's just an awesome shooter, playmaker type. And yeah, two guys that have been super awesome to watch and totally unexpected. Denny Avdia, he's a guy that I've been high on for a while, so I'm not totally surprised that he's having this season, especially after the second half of last season. But being able to really validate the leap that he took in that second half of last season and build off that, especially on this Blazers team who's been injured, so he's pretty much been playing point guard for them.
Yeah.
That's been a really cool one. Last two guys I want to shout out would be Nikhil Alexander Walker, who went to the Hawks in the offseason. Was looked at as a nice move, but I mean, I don't think anybody expected for him to be a 20-point per game scorer, which has been really awesome to watch. And then Jalen Duren, he was maybe the least expected, but at the same time, I feel like he wasn't considered like a most improved favorite preseason. And for him to be like a legit like 20 and 10 guy and a legit like all-star level player was not on my radar, even though he's a little bit younger.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that list because it mixes guys who, you know, like you said, Denny, he's always been good at the things that he's doing this year. He's just doing it at a crazier volume. So it's like it's not so wild to think that he just got better at everything he was already good at, but it is still wild to see him produce, at this high of a volume and this consistently. But then guys like Rollins and Duran, where it's like you guys are doing things that I didn't even know was like part of your skill set. Like Ryan Rollins looks so comfortable out there. And it's not like everyone was like, oh, if you just give him, higher volume, he'll, be this great finisher and outside shooter and playmaker. It's like we don't even know if he's an NBA player. So that's why that one was so fun. And Jalen Duren, it's like I didn't know you were this comfortable with the ball in your hands. Like I didn't know you had this, this level of like competence down low. So yeah, I love to see that. And then for the Hawks, Nikhil Alexander-Walker, like they seem to hint at having the ball in his hands more this offseason. I was like, oh, maybe like Kobe Buffkin will get like second unit point guard minutes. And then they got rid of him. And it's like, all right, I guess they really trust Nikhil Alexander Walker as like the primary guy, when Trae Young's not playing. And they do, and he's making it worth it for them. So I just love the mix of seeing guys where it's like you kind of saw this breakout coming, and then also guys where you're like they just look like different players than they did in the past.
Yeah, most definitely. I feel like that's the most interesting part of just like these breakout players. It's just like how many different types of breakout guys there can be, really. And I mean, in terms of like Nikhil Alexander Walker, I feel like he was definitely a guy that you expect a little bit more from, but not to this level. And it's really interesting. I mean, I don't want to make this whole thing about Trae Young, but the Hawks without Trae Young for the past like month and a half, to however long he's been injured, they've been a lot of fun to watch. And that like whole point guard by committee thing's been really interesting, and it's worked pretty well overall with him. And then Jalen Johnson's been incredible. He's another guy considered put it on this list. Dyson Daniels hasn't been having quite the season as he had last year, but his playmaking has been pretty good. So that's been an interesting one to watch for me. And yeah,
And maybe
overall,
that's the next thing in the NBA is the no real point guard. The Rockets and Hawks are both like, we'll just have like our forwards and centers and whoever take the ball up and just kind of pass it around. Like maybe that's the next wave. Maybe point guards are going out of style.
yeah, no, I was thinking about that. I feel like this year more than ever we've seen it, and to me it's kind of tough because I default to like I want a guy that can like set the table.
Me too.
I think like ultimately it depends on the team though. Like for me, like the Timberwolves, obviously like that's the team I cover, so I watch them all the time. But it's like yeah, you can sort of see like why this specific group might need like that table setter, that like point guard, stabilize and force. But for other teams like the Rockets, for example, I don't know if they totally do. And I mean, even like Reed Shepard, who's their closest thing to a point guard, he's not like that traditional table setter, and he plays off the ball a lot of times. So I feel like for different teams it can work, but for other teams they might need that point guard. I just think it sort of depends on the group.
Yeah, and I should quickly say that in terms of players, I was wrong about. Reed Shepard is the number one guy. I was convinced he was going to be like, sixth man of the year in the Euro League by the end of 2025-26, and I'm like, okay, I'll say I was wrong on that one. But yeah, no, it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, no, for sure. What do you got as your next storyline?
So next up, I got the Spurs improvement both with Wemby and without Wemby. I think, when you're building a team, when you're rebuilding, like I say this all the time, like so many teams think that getting a superstar is the end of a rebuild when a lot of times it's actually the beginning of a rebuild. I think the best example of this in, recent, I mean, I guess Zion, maybe just the Pelicans in general, like they got Anthony Davis and we're like, we're good. We don't really need to build anything around him. And then, 6 years later, they've won one playoff series and he's demanding a trade to the Lakers. They get Zion. That's a different story. But just in general, teams, they acquire superstars and then kind of get lazy. And the Spurs haven't done that. I think they've already, they got Wemby and were immediately, the thought process was how can we build the best team around him to complement him, but also to succeed when, if he gets hurt, he's 7'5". It's kind of unprecedented to have a player like Wemby in the NBA. And so just to see how successful they've been, I think they're 9-2, 9-3 without him just because they, focused on getting a backup center this offseason. They focused on, a balanced lineup where, you have a three guard backcourt, you have guys who can space the floor, you have defensive upside. Like, it's just a really impressive roster they've built that can sustain without Wemby. And then also doesn't get overly reliant on him when he comes back, but also knows how to incorporate him quickly when he comes back into the lineup. Like, so if he does, miss games because no one plays all 82 games and he's 7'5", I'm sure he'll have minor injury problems throughout his career. Like the ability to oscillate between him in the lineup and him out of the lineup and still be successful both ways has been really impressive to me. Like Mitch Johnson has done a pretty fantastic job with that team.
Yeah, most definitely. That's an awesome one. And the Spurs are just another one of my absolute favorite teams to watch in the league. Honestly, probably my favorite just around the league. It's hard not to like them. And what's really impressed me is just how good they can be without Wemby. Because I was pretty high on the Spurs heading into the year. I thought they had a nice supporting cast, and then obviously Wemby is probably going to take that next step in his third year, which he has. But I didn't fully expect them to be nearly this good without Wemby, and it's just honestly floored me. You look at Stephon Castle; he's
Yeah,
really
he's
taking that
incredible.
next
He's
step
so
up.
good.
He's awesome, and I mean, he's a guy that's interesting because he did win Rookie of the Year, but he had a lot of detractors, and I was kind of like, I mean, I get he's not a perfect player. I mean, no rookie is, quite frankly, but I felt like he was kind of criticized for no reason, despite winning Rookie of the Year, and he's totally leveled up. You look at De'Aaron Fox, who has been an absolute seamless fit with this team, and he's been awesome. He's having sort of that, like, I guess I'd call it like a revenge season because he was another guy that was like kind of criticized. And then Dylan Harper, we talked about him before, making that immediate impact. But then, like you said, they signed Luke Cornett. That was a huge move, especially the non-Wemby games. Luke Cornett's a legit guy who can. He's probably not an ideal starting center, but he can start if needed. And then you get a ton of length and versatility around these guys, and that's a winning recipe. And I mean, I was high on the Spurs, like I said. I think I had them sixth in the West, but I didn't expect them to be this good. I feel like now I was actually low on the Spurs,
Right.
having them at sixth.
I know, and Castle is fascinating because, you know, he wins Rookie of the Year, and then everyone goes, "Yeah, he was good last year," but now they have Fox and they have Harper. Like, is he kind of the odd man out? And now it's like, is he the best? Among them, like 3, 4 years from now, like is Stephon Castle the best out of that group? And also shout out to Devin Vassell just because he's always been a pretty good player. Like he's a guy who always would pass the eye test, and then the numbers weren't really great. And now it's like he does look even better, and the numbers are even better. Like he's shooting nearly 40% from three, I think, which is, I assume, a career high. So yeah, it's just the pieces fit pretty perfectly there. And then they still have like Carter Bryant waiting in the wings, who they think can be like that two-way wing. So they've built it pretty impressively, and I think it's only up from here. So yeah, shout out the Spurs.
Absolutely, yeah. One other quick guy I want to shout out before I'll move on to my next one is Keldon Johnson, because he's a
Yeah,
guy
seriously.
that I was like, does he even have like a spot in this rotation? Like, not in a bad way. They just had a lot of depth. But he's really reinvented himself earlier in his career. He was kind of like a high level scorer, but he didn't totally have a lot of efficiency. He was like, yeah, what's this guy's role going forward? But he's totally reinvented himself as like this absolute spark plug off the bench who just does all the little things so well, which has really impressed me.
Yeah, they've just been so good at, they've had multiple guys who it's like, is it kind of time to, even Harrison Barnes, where it's like, well, does he really have a role? He was like, well, he's been good again. Keldon Johnson is good. Like Mitch Johnson's ability to just make everyone happy, basically. It's pretty impressive coaching, and pretty impressive, maneuvering of a roster that like a bad coach could run into like log jams at multiple positions, but he's found a way to balance it pretty impressively.
Oh yeah, he's done an awesome job in his first like full season as a head coach, and I mean that Spurs culture is still there. And yeah, I mean early season, but he definitely deserves like some coach of the year consideration. He's been fantastic, no doubt. Yeah, so the next team I'll talk about or storyline I'll talk about is the Suns, because this is a team that I'll admit I was totally wrong on. I had them as like 12th in the West or something, I want to say, but this is very clearly, I think, going to be a playing team at the very least, but it looks like they'll be one of those eight playoff teams. And to me, it's just, the thing that's really surprised me is just how different this team plays. I mean, the culture looks completely flipped with first year head coach Jordan Ott, from last year, where it was absolutely no defense, just it kind of lackadaisical. The vibes were just awful, and now the vibes are completely amazing. I was kind of skeptical heading into the season. I was like, I don't really totally love the pieces they got at the Kevin Durant trade. But I mean, Dylan Brooks has been absolutely fantastic. We haven't seen much of Jalen Green, so can't really talk about him. But Dylan Brooks, I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for what he brings to a culture, honestly. You look at what he did with the Rockets a couple of years ago, and now the Suns, even the Grizzlies, I feel like he was kind of like the heart and soul of those Grizzlies teams who won 50 something games and were a
And then
top two
became the
seed.
fall guy when they lost. It's like, okay, you can't just change your tune this much about Dylan Brooks, but yeah.
No, for sure. I think one of my favorite things is like looking back, Dylan Brooks will be brought back under no circumstances.
Yeah, I was just looking at that the other day. I was like, Champs, did someone actually tell you that, or was this just you editorializing a little bit? Because that seems extra harsh. I've never heard any front office say that before.
Absolutely. I feel like either way, it's kind of crazy. Like if the Grizzlies actually said that, or if Shams was like, "Let me just like pile up on this
Like
guy
this
who
is what they meant.
admittedly, yeah." But yeah, he's been awesome. He's another guy I probably should have talked about with my breakout guys because like I think he'd be like a 20 point per game scorer ever, but he's been incredible and he just brings so much to the table. That's not even talk his defense, his energy, just it brings a lot to the team. I talked about Colin Gillespie earlier. He's been fantastic. Booker just he does what we know him to do. He's been awesome, but even like when Booker's off the court or in games where he doesn't play, I think it was like last week they played the Timberwolves. They beat the Timberwolves without Booker, and yet you could say that's probably not the best loss for the Timberwolves. But the
Yeah.
Suns played really really well, and you got to credit them at some point. Mark Williams has been another guy who's really impressed me. And yeah, just overall their defense and their attention to details, the way the ball moves on offense as well. Everything just looks night and day from last year, and it's definitely been one of my favorite things to watch this year. I mean, you look at the Suns last year; they were probably some of the hardest watches in the league, and now they're one of the best watches in the league.
I fully agree. I'll take my victory lap. Maybe it's too early on the Suns because I was like, are we sure this team's like really bad? I look up and down the roster. I'm like, there's at least like NBA talent most of the way down. But yeah, it's pretty wild because in years past it was like, how can a team with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant be so miserable to watch? I like watched Suns games because it's my job to watch basketball, but I was like, this is not particularly enjoyable. And yeah, they've been awesome. Dylan Brooks specifically is the definition of a guy whose efficiency is pretty bad, but then you watch the game and you're like, he had a good game. Like, yeah, he went like 9 for 19 for 21 or 22 points. It's like, that's not great for the analytics, but it's like, he did contribute to this game in a positive way. And he seems to do that most nights. Yeah, they've just been really fun. A huge shout out to a guy who has consistently been one of my favorite players in basketball. And I don't know why teams will just like sign him. He plays well and then they get rid of him. Jordan Goodwin. I just adore that guy's game. He fits the mold of a guy who his counting stats are always terrible. And so if you just look at a stat sheet, you're like, this guy probably shouldn't be in the NBA. And then you watch a game and you're like, this guy has to be like an all-star, right? He just contributes in so many ways. I just love a guy who does everything but can't really shoot. But he's even shooting the three better this year. I think he's up to like 37%. And yeah, they just have a good team that seems to enjoy playing with each other. I don't know what the ceiling is. It's probably like seventh or eighth. Maybe they sneak in, they win a play-in game and get the privilege of getting stomped by the Thunder in the first round. But I remember ESPN put out this thing of like future power rankings before the year, and they were last because they were last in like current roster, like future outlook, draft picks. I was like, that seems really really harsh. And so I'm glad they're kind of proving wrong. The idea that like things are so bleak in Phoenix because I never really thought that, and I like seeing them succeed. And it's weird that Devin Booker's numbers still look great and he's still an incredible player, but he hasn't looked like an all NBA, Devin Booker. It's just kind of the shooting percentages are down. And it's like I think teams are rightfully maybe putting so much attention on him and being like, okay, well, Dylan Brooks, and Colin Gillespie and these other guys, they won't beat us this time. And then they kind of keep doing it. And it's like, if that's what it takes, like if Booker's shooting percentages have to be down a little bit just because he's getting so much attention and that leads to other guys continuing to like win games for them, then I think everyone would be okay with that in Phoenix. Like Devin Booker, he's had chances to leave. He seems like the ultimate Phoenix guy. Like I think he's happy to win if he has to shoot like 31 or 2% from three because of it. But they've been a phenomenal watch. They've been one of my favorite teams to follow this year.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think like with Booker, it is interesting because if you had told me before the season that they're going to be like seventh in the West, to this point, I would have been like, okay, so Booker's averaging like 30,
Yeah, he's just
32 a
doing it all
game, right?
himself.
Um, but it's really been the supporting cast and how they've really stepped up, and that's pretty awesome to watch. And then just in general, I feel like this is just a lesson to the rest of the league that fit matters a lot more than talent does. I think just simply put, I don't think I have to like elaborate on that a ton, but I feel like that's something that we're gonna see a lot more of in general going forward with the league.
And the fact that Common Mall watch has kind of been a non-factor. It's like I don't think that's because he's bad. I think it's because sometimes centers take a little longer to get acclimated to the NBA. Like I'm pretty sure he was a one and done at Duke, so it's like they maybe have like a future, defensive anchor, like rim protector who could balance Mark Williams perfectly. They're set up maybe better than people gave him credit for. So I like to see that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with Malawachi also started playing basketball when he was a little bit older than most of these
Like, give
guys.
him some time. He's still
Yeah,
figuring out the sport.
for sure. I mean, if he was on a team that also, I mean, Mark Williams, I mean, you can go down the line like Nick Richards. Also, they have like a lot of like legit centers now, so it is hard for him to break into this rotation as well.
Yeah, they'll just keep trading centers to and from the Charlotte Hornets for all of eternity. They're like, all right, who's next up? We'll get Musa Diabate, like Nurkic, Mark Williams, Nick Richards. They just go back and forth forever between the Suns and the Hornets. I don't know what they're doing over there, but
It is a funny connection. I mean, I'm sure all these like GMs like they have relationships around the league, but like it is funny to see like specific teams like always sort of turn to each other to make trades, you know? Like I mean the Suns and or not the Kins and Bulls is like the
yeah.
biggest example that pops into my head.
They're like, well, it didn't work for you guys, but if we try the exact same thing, I'm sure it'll be a better result.
Absolutely. Yeah, so what do you have as your final storyline here?
And final storyline, the Pistons seeming to skip over, a bunch of steps in a rebuild and go straight from pretty good team to maybe the team that comes out of the East in the NBA Finals is pretty impressive. And it all comes down to Cade. He's playing like a legit MVP competitor, and he's the guy who we're gonna look back. We already are looking back. I mean, like, how did anyone ever think that this wasn't the clear path for Cade? That, like, MVP caliber player, like number one on a number one team in a conference. How did we ever think that wasn't the obvious result? Because he's gotten better every year, and it's like, sure, there have been some bumps along the way, but the teams he was playing for early in his career were brutal. They were losing 25 games in a row. So, I just like to see the Pistons kind of make this jump. I They still might be 1 year away. If they get the Knicks or if the Cavs get hot or whatever in the playoffs, like they still wouldn't feel like the real favorite. Maybe that's just because they haven't done it before. Um, but yeah, they've been pretty awesome. The Duncan Robinson replacing Malik Beasley just kind of as a last second, we need a guy who can space the floor, and then Duncan Robinson playing like the best basketball of his career and being like probably locked down that starting two guard spot for the rest of the year has been a cool story because it's just everything kind of working in combination to lift them to the level they are now. And it's like, they play these close, hard nosed games, and you're like, oh, that was a good win by the Pistons, but they just keep doing that to the point where it's like, oh, they're like 21-5 now. Like they just, I don't know. It's like they haven't felt overly dominant overall, but then you go back and look and you're like, that was a good one, that was a good one. Like there's few letdowns for them. They just kind of go out and get the job done most nights, and it's cool to watch, and they've impressed me a ton this season.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. I mean, you look at them last year, they were a six seed, which was a massive improvement from winning
Yeah.
14 games the year before.
Yeah.
But I was kind of wondering, I mean, I felt like they were maybe going to be a 4 or 5 seed. They could maybe take a little bit of a step up, but this was just not on my radar at all. And yeah, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of factors like the Duran leap, but I mean, at the end of the day, it really does come down to Cade, largely, and he's been a legit like top three level MVP candidate, and he's just been completely incredible. And like you said, it is crazy to think just 2 years ago, like how people were talking about Cade.
It was like, oh, is Cade or Jaden Ivey going to be the guy who leads this backcourt for the next 10 years? Now it's like, why did we ever think that?
Why was that even a conversation? And I mean, really, I think it kind of goes back to a little bit like this idea of like fit versus talent in a little bit of a different way. I don't feel like the Pistons have upgraded their talent that
Oh,
much
yeah.
compared to 14 wins, but they have upgraded the fit. They have gotten a lot more floor spacing around Cade, and yeah, the young guys have progressed. And then Bickerstaff having a coach who wants to be there, that's probably a big
It
deal.
certainly helps.
But yeah, I mean, it's been an awesome story, especially just how bad they were for so long. And yeah, I mean, who knows how far this can go? I do think they have champ or like at least like make it to the finals upside. Just based off the East right now. But yeah, I mean, their clutch time stuff is like truly insane, and a lot of it does come down to just like Cade's awesome. But I feel like this is one thing my friend Charlie always likes to say is like we always obsess over this clutch time offense, but a lot of times it's like your defense in the clutch wins these games. And that's one thing I have noticed with the Pistons is they're so physical. They have really a bunch of good defenders. And a lot of times they're winning these games because they're getting so many stops and nobody can score on them and they're so physical, they're so versatile, and that's one thing that has impressed me with this team.
I agree. And that's the thing that the clutch time stats, the first month or two of an NBA season, there's always stats where you go, oh, that has to come back down to earth. That's not sustainable. But the last couple of years, there have been teams that like are just either amazing or terrible in the clutch. Like sometimes that's just team's identity. And since it is only at most 5 minutes each game, like we can get to the end of the season and the Pistons could still be like plus 40 in clutch time stats. It's like if they just happen to be that good in the clutch, like I don't think that's necessarily something that at least within a season fluctuates that much. And it's like they have been that team. You just trust them late in games. And that's something that wins you games in the playoffs, wins you series in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's, like you said, that's something that will translate to the playoffs. And hey, guess what? Yeah, I mean, it is even at this point kind of a small sample size, but there's probably a reason why some of these teams are really good in the clutch and not so good in the clutch on the other side. So yeah, that's a really good point there for sure.
All right, finish us off. What you
All
got?
right. Yeah, no, I think this is kind of a similar note. It's a little bit different, but it's just how wide open the East is. I think this is something that as much fun as it has been this season so far, it's also just something I'm looking forward to seeing play out. But we talked a lot about the Knicks and Pistons. I think they're really great and they've been awesome to watch this season. At the same time, neither team strikes me as a juggernaut in the playoffs. The Knicks, I do think there's still some valid concerns with them. I mean, they're still not incredibly deep. You look at Mitchell Robinson, he's incredibly injury prone. Can he hold up? And then like the defensive duo of like Brunson and Cat, I feel like that's legitimate. Those are some legitimate questions in terms of like being overwhelming favorites in the East. And then you look at the Pistons, I feel like it just comes down to experience.
Yeah.
I feel like there's
Happened
nothing that
so fast. It's like even the Thunder, where it's like that felt like a fast rebuild. It's like they were still, the 35 win season or whatever it was. Like there were still at least a couple seasons in between being really bad and being that good. And it's like the Pistons, this would be that season for them, where it's like, okay, they were really good, but then still needed that extra season. So it's like, if they did it this fast, that'd be massive. But that is, I think, a very valid concern.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a guy who like kind of overvalues experience. I didn't pick OKC to win it because of that experience last year. Obviously, I look like an idiot for it, but it's like I do feel like history shows us that like typically you need to get your playoff scars. You need to be in like multiple series, and the Pistons have had one playoff series with this core. So I'm a little bit concerned if they can take that next step. And then you look at the Cavs and Magic. Both teams have been pretty disappointing. Right now, the Cavs aren't even a top eight team in the conference, which is kind of insane. At the same time, if these teams put together a nice run over the next few weeks or whenever, they could certainly rise up. You look at the Magic; they are fifth right now, but they're a half game behind the Raptors for third. The Cavs are ninth right now, but they're 1.5 games back from third. So it's just so close. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes to April and these teams turn it around, and I might pick one of those two teams. I mean, with the Magic. I just need to see Paulo and Franz play well together for like a couple weeks, but I could be bought in.
Like a
That team
game.
has right a game, a nice moment, but that team has a lot of like ingredients of a championship team, in my opinion. I mean, the defense, the versatility, they're finally putting it together on offense, which is huge. And then the Cavs came into the season as kind of favorites in the East, maybe the Knicks, but it was definitely those two were the clear cut favorites. But yeah, overall, I just can't remember a season with so many teams that I could see making it out of one conference. I mentioned those four teams, but I mean, if the Celtics can get Tatum back and he's rolling, and maybe they trade for a big, who knows? I think they could make a potential run to the finals. The Miami Heat, we've seen them do it time and again, not with this exact roster, but their offense has looked a lot better than I would have thought. Can they put together another insane run? I wouldn't rule it out if Trey Young returns and this Hawks team is clicking. I wouldn't rule it out. So it's just interesting to see a conference that has just so much uncertainty, and it's exciting for me to see how it's going to play out over the next few months.
Yeah, I'm with you. You talked about the Cavs and the Magic. Like the Magic were great. They had that a great like 2 week stretch where it's like, okay, this is it for real now. Like now they're gonna start rattling off wins, and then they kind of came back down to earth. And it's like I've defended the Cavs for so many years. This core, I'm like, no, give them a chance, give them a chance. Now it's like, okay, you guys have gotten the chances now. It's like And now coming into this year off a disappointing year where just, you know, it felt like the pressure was high, but that the it shouldn't have been that hard in this Eastern Conference for them to just come in with real energy and start, dominating teams. And that's been disappointing. And it's like now that we have seen them try it a couple times with this core and it hasn't really worked, coming into this year with the disappointing start, it's like this feels less like something they turn around now because we've seen them be dominant in the regular season and then still come up short in the playoffs. So it's like there's like a double layer of like motivation they have to get past. It's like the motivation to even be good in the regular season now. And it's like, well, that motivation is harder because then you still have the extra layer of you have been good in the regular season before and still come up short in the playoffs. So it's like, it just feels like things are compounding for the Cavs right now in the worst way. And it's like, it feels more bleak than it has in years in Cleveland. And that's sad for me to admit because I've been such a Cavs defender. I'm like, no, they can do it. Just keep giving them a chance. But yeah, it's just kind of there's like 8 or 9 teams where you could go, well, if they kind of figure things out. And I think the Raptors are like maybe the biggest example of that. They're just kind of a collection of guys who needed to go somewhere else to like, figure things out. And they all kind of have, but it's like these guys have all, a bunch of, Ingram and RJ Barrett, both guys who like needed, fresh starts or whatever. And it's like they have been good, but it's like there's so many questions with that team just because they're made up. It just of talented but kind of random and disparate players who seem to be fitting together. But they're kind of like the Magic where you get this short burst where it's like, okay, this is what the team is supposed to be, and then kind of this backslide. So I really have no idea what the outcome in the East is. It's just endless possibilities in the playoffs. I think the Knicks, for some reason, maybe the Cup subconsciously made me believe in them more, even though I'm like, it's the NBA Cup, it's cool, but it has nothing to do with the playoffs. But I'm like, well, they did win in like an elimination game, so I don't know. But yeah, that has been a great storyline. Just seeing the Eastern Conference power rankings change like by the day in my head, where it's like, okay, that was a great win for the Magic. Oh, that was a rough loss for the Cavs. But like, oh, the Pistons keep winning. So I don't know. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I mean, with the Knicks, I kind of default to them just because I do think like overall they're the most like talented and proven team. So I'm probably gonna end up picking them come April. But like at the same time, depending on how the rest of the season plays out, I could see myself changing my mind pretty easily. And I mean, with the Cavs, I think that's such a good point because it's like they literally won over 60 games last year and they lost in the playoffs to, I mean, a really good Pacers team. They did lose in the second round, but it was in like 5 games, and it looked like a really rough series.
They're
And
brutal.
they haven't been able to put it together in the playoffs. And if they haven't been over the last 3 years, and this is potentially their worst season in this like 4 year stretch, how do you believe in them right now?
Maybe it's intentional. They're like, we exerted too much energy in the regular season and past years, so let's exert as little energy as we possibly can in this regular season, and then we can shock everyone in the playoffs.
Maybe they're onto something
The
there.
Heat did it. They're taking the page out of the Eric Spoelstra book. They're like the Jimmy Butler, give 40% effort in the regular season and then just explode in the playoffs when no one expects it.
No, exactly. And I mean, if there's one player I do trust on that Cavs team to produce in the playoffs, it's Donovan Mitchell. I mean, say what you will about the Cavs, but you could never say that it's been his fault. He averages like 35 points a game in the playoffs.
I have such a soft spot for Donovan Mitchell. I'm like, I want this guy to succeed because these Cavs are looking a little like the Utah Jazz of the mid 2010s now. I'm like, I don't want that to be what Donovan Mitchell gets known for is like great regular season teams who come up short. It's like that would be a sad outcome. So I find myself cheering for the Cavs, even though I don't really know why. I'm like, I want this team to succeed. Maybe it's just because I've written so much about how they're actually good, and that would be a rough take in retrospect for me if they just kind of crumble.
Yeah, no, you're in too deep. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm confident saying that one day Mitchell will be on a team that like breaks through and has some level of playoff success. Will it be on the Cavs or a new team? I don't know.
Yeah.
But one day he'll be a legit player on a legitimately good team that could win the title.
Just even like a finals appearance that feels like a win at this point.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's gonna win a championship, but that's way too hard to guarantee in
Yeah, yeah.
modern
One
NBA. But
step
yeah,
at a time.
No, absolutely. Oh yeah, I think we can move on to our audience questions. We got three questions today. Let's start over on Instagram. First one is from our guy Bruce Velez. He asks, "Where do you see Jonathan Kuminga getting traded?"
I mean, it is the boring answer, but the Kings make so much sense. Like it's that just felt like this offseason, like the final, the solution being the Kings like, yeah, we kind of want him. Like, we don't really want to give up these guards. And the Warriors like, okay, well, we'll sign him, but like we'll sign him because we kind of feel like we have to. Like, I don't know what like his contract's so strange because it's a team option for next year, right? So I think, he has like a year and a half of like team control left, but it's like what does a year and a half of team control do for the Kings? But then at the same time, who else is going to want to, match salary and give up a guy for Kuminga? So I think Kuminga for one or two or five of the Kings guards like makes sense. Throw some picks one way or the other. I don't know. He's such a strange player and prospect that it's gauging his value league wide is so tough. But I think if I had to pick, the Kings just makes the most sense. There's too many connections there already. I think that's where he ends up.
Yeah, no, the Kins are definitely like the clear favorite. I'll go with a different answer. I was gonna say Kins, but it's like yeah, I don't know. I feel like that it's kind of the one that is the most likely outcome. But thinking outside of the box a little bit, the other two teams that came to mind would be the Pelicans. I actually did a podcast with Bruce a couple of weeks ago where we did mock trades. He had him going to the Pelicans in exchange for like, or him and like a bunch of picks. I can't remember the exact details, but it was like him and a bunch of picks for Trey Murphy, which I could see potentially. The other team I'd throw out would be the Chicago Bulls. I think when you look at guys the Warriors would like to get back, we saw them turn down a deal for Malik Monk, which never made a ton of sense. But I think like some extra perimeter shot creation other than Curry would be really nice. A lot of things would be really nice, but like specifically that. So I think something around I think the Bulls would have to include a little bit more salary wise, but something around Kuminga for Kobe White I think could make a lot of sense, and that's an outcome I could see being possible.
I could see that too. I think Bulls fans would not love that. They'd be like, why did we get Patrick Williams Volume 2 when we have Patrick Williams Volume 1 still on the team? That is an interesting one, though. I think, yeah, it really depends on what the Bulls see Kobe White as. It's like he's kind of their like number one option right now. So they could scoff at that, or they could be like, well, we have to do something. Like Kobe White is kind of stuck in this area of like, he's obviously an NBA level player and a great guy to have on your team, but is he the level of guard you build a team around? And if he's not, is the team too far away from contention to keep him around and like just keep signing him to deals because he's more of a complementary piece? So I don't know. It's like it's kind of a maze for him and the Bulls, but that's an interesting one. If I actually really had to pick, I don't even think Kuminga is going to get traded. I think the Warriors will be very disappointed with like whatever trade offer they get, and they'll be like, okay, fine. It's more worthwhile to just have him be good sometimes on our team for this year and probably next year than it would be to get like whatever the offers are. But that could age poorly. But that my gut tells me for some reason that Kuminga is actually not getting dealt, even though that seems like the most obvious trade in the NBA.
I mean, if they didn't move on from him after the whole offseason
That's
saga
kind of
where
what I'm thinking.
they,
It's like
they
it's not
took
like
out
this is
so
a new thing. Yeah.
it's kind of crazy how many different like sign and trade offers they turned down. Like the Malik Monk one is like the first one that comes to mind, but I believe they also turned down something from the Suns, maybe even something from the Bulls. I remember they were interested in him, but it's like I don't know if like not then is it never gonna happen? Even though he's still
I
getting
don't
DNPs,
like he's just gonna be in rumors forever, and then when he actually leaves, it's gonna be like just kind of out of nowhere. It's like, oh, okay, but
it's
yeah,
gonna be to a team where we don't expect. Like
yeah,
Miles
exactly.
Turner was in rumors for 10 years, but it was
And
never
then he ends up on
rumored
the
to the
Bucks. Yeah,
Bucks. So yeah, no, that should be an interesting one to monitor as the trade deadline approaches. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's one of the teams that's most rumored, but it could always be an unexpected team for sure. Next one we got is from our guy Ryan Druin. He wants to know what player pre 1970 would be the best given in today's NBA given proper training and practice.
yeah. So this is an interesting one because I had a lot of guys in my head, and then looked up their stats, and they were like all in the 70s. My first thought was Bill Russell, or was Bill Walton, because the passing big man, is such an archetype people look for now, but he played in the 70s. So I'm going to go with Oscar Robertson instead. Big O was a legend in his time. He was also maybe like the OG free throw merchant. He averaged 8.8 free throw attempts throughout his career, and there were multiple seasons where he was like over 11 per game. And I just think the passing and the basketball genius and the smarts translates to any era. So I'll go with Big O for a pre 1970s. He played a little bit in the 70s, but started his career in 1960. So all through the 60s, I'll still count that. I just think the brilliance as a basketball player, like the feel for the game, translates through any era.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great one. I mean, especially you look at like the modern NBA, I feel like these bigger guards have been a lot more prevalent, and he totally fits into that. He had an awesome career back in the 60s, and I don't see a reason why he wouldn't be awesome again in this modern NBA,
I
especially.
will say though, turnovers were not a recorded stat then, so he could have been averaging like 8 turnovers per game, and I don't know that. So if that could change things a little bit, but not knowing how many turnovers he averaged in my head, it's like, well, the assist to turnover was amazing. He was a basketball genius. So if anyone has
Just
like
assume it
Oscar
was
Robertson
amazing.
turnover stats, yeah, let me know. But until then, I'll have the Big O, cooking in the modern NBA.
And the free throw stuff is something I didn't think about, but that's a great point, especially the modern NBA. I mean, foul baiting it's a real thing. Let's be honest. That definitely based off some of those free throw numbers, that would make a lot of sense for that to translate. And yeah, I feel like that's a great one. I'll go with another guard. At first, I was kind of like Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain, and that's like probably the best answer because it was like they were the best in that era. Why wouldn't they be the best now? Ultimately, that's maybe the right answer, but I think Jerry West is a really interesting one just because of how good he was in that era. And I feel like with like the 3-point shooting, they didn't have the 3-point line obviously back then, but like he was a really good free throw shooter. I feel like that's something that would translate. And just overall as a scorer, he was so gifted. He averaged 27 points per game for his career. And I feel like just, yeah, as that like 6'3" guard, can play on or off the ball. I feel like that would really translate nicely to the modern NBA. And then as well as his scoring abilities, just his playmaking. And I mean, he really had one of the best careers of all time. It doesn't get talked about because he played a super long time ago and he only, I think, won one championship. But yeah, he's an all-time great, and I feel like his game would translate super nice to the modern NBA.
I like it, and I think you know, it wasn't that long ago where it felt like if you weren't crazy hyper athletic as a guard, like you wouldn't even get a chance in the NBA. And I think we've moved past that to where it's like you don't really have to be jumping out of the gym as long as like your feel for the game is great. Like you can be not that athletic. Like the potentially best point guard in the NBA is Jalen Brunson. Like he's not dunking on anyone's head. So it's like I like that pick.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's an interesting point too, because it's like I feel like now in the modern NBA, it might not get talked about a ton, but like skill is so much more important than
100%.
athleticism.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like if a guy's best skill coming into a draft or as a prospect is like he's super athletic, it's like okay, I guess that's cool.
That might be a red flag now, which is
Yeah, exactly.
10 years ago you might not have said that, but definitely interesting. Okay, moving on to Twitter, our guy Roundball Renaissance wants to know if you could cast any NBA player in a movie, who is it and what would the movie be about?
That's a great question. I'll go topical and I'll say a horror movie where Chris Paul hosts a Halloween party and nobody shows up, and then he goes on some sort of revenge streak against his teammates, him and Ivica Zubats, because he was the only teammate who showed up, get revenge against the Clippers and the city of Los Angeles.
That's such a funny one. I didn't even think about that, but that like Halloween story is like genuinely insane. I mean, that whole Ramona Shelburne piece was totally insane, but like the
Absurd.
Halloween part is
It's like
definitely
ripe for a show or a movie, so I think that could be
that
perfect
would
for
be a
if anyone
nice
wants to
October
catch it.
release.
I won't trademark that one. If anyone wants to take it, it's all theirs.
No, that's a great one. My first instinct with this question was to say like something with Anthony Edwards. Maybe that's just like my Timberwolves bias, but we saw him in what the hell was that Adam
Hustle.
Sandler movie? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Hustle. He was awesome, and he was like
He's
pretty
awesome
much
because I
playing
think he just
himself.
played himself. They're like, yeah, just kind of be yourself, and you'll end up being the antagonist. And he's like, perfect.
But yeah, I mean, he's just so funny and he's got the personality. I could totally see him just becoming like maybe not like a full-on actor after he retires, but like being in a lot of movies and stuff because he's just hilarious. But I decided to go a different route, and I am actually gonna go with another Clipper, uh, Kawhi Leonard. And maybe this could be potentially his punishment for the scandal. I'd like to see a movie about Kawhi Leonard. Maybe he plays like it's a different name. Maybe it's Dennis, for example. Just about this guy who's really passionate about the environment, and he goes around the world and he plants a tree maybe in every country, every state. Just he travels and he plants trees and he tries to save the environment. I think that would be really funny. And then just in general, Kawhi's personality, not exactly outgoing, not exactly very funny. I would like to see a full movie where Kawhi's like the star of the show. I think that would just be hilarious.
I think it's perfect. He was like an ideal actor for a Yorgos Lanthimos movie where everything's like very deadpan, like direct. It's like he and Colin Farrell could star in like a Yorgos Lanthimos, dark comedy about people planting trees around the world or something. So I like that. I would see that one too.
Yeah, no, that would be a funny one. I definitely, yeah, like you said, just like the deadpan seriousness would be hilarious. Yeah, no, that is a great shout for sure. Unless you have any closing thoughts, I think we can wrap up the show here.
I think I'm good. That was a great conversation. I appreciate you thinking of me, having me on. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we officially wrap up the show, though, I just want to give you a chance to plug your work, tell our listeners where they can find you at.
Yeah, you can find me all over FanSided on any of the NBA sites at FanSided. My own personal site is called The Broken Press. It's hosted at Ghost. So I think it's the dash broken dash press dash one dot ghost dot io. No worries if anyone can't remember that address. But yeah, that's where you can find my own personal work and elsewhere, around the internet.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on the show, and I'll throw those links in the description. Make sure you guys go check out some of Quinn's work. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. All right, thank you for tuning into another episode of the Cassels Cast. Once again, shout out to Quinn for coming on the show, and make sure to check out some of his work. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.